Well, I so appreciate you joining me here, Laz. I know we met through the phone booth guys, which, of course, as everybody knows, you can find at phoneboothpodcast.substack.com. But yeah, no, it's a pleasure to actually talk to you face to face. I know we've spoken on spaces a few times. I
Yeah.
see you in the chat a lot, which I appreciate when we go live with the boys. But welcome. Appreciate you coming on the cast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Jonah, and congratulations, man. I'm really glad you started your own thing, and I'm excited to be among the first to be on here. Really appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. Well, as I appreciate you trusting me to jump on with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool thing. I really appreciate, Ted and the phone booth boys really giving me that extra nudge. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. One of the things, in addition to just kind of trying to make sure that everything was done properly, and I knew how to do everything, which is itself a hurdle. Um, the other thing is, and I know we were talking about little bit about this precast, but the other thing for me that is very heavy and something that I'm aware of, it's like if I write something that's good and positive and brings people to the truth, then that's gonna like I get credit for that in a sense. It's not like, but anyways, like that I can answer for that, and I can show when that's good fruit that I've borne in my life, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But if I say something that leads someone into error or that causes someone to fall or to sin or to stumble or to get confused or to lose their way, like I feel like that's a weight that I carry as well. So for me, that's one thing that's always made it's a word of caution that I feel on my own, a weight of caution that I feel on my own heart, because I don't want to be an instrument that leads someone away from truth or God or goodness, right?
Yep. Yep. And that's very cognizant of you. To think of it that way. I've never really heard somebody, I guess, voice it that way because most of the time people talk without even thinking. They just run their mouth. Most of the times they're not even thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, to realize that you are in a position of power with your words and your words have meaning and they have much more impact on others. They're literally spells, right? Um, so, the right words can uplift somebody and essentially cause a ripple effect in not only your consciousness, but their reality. But
Mm-hmm.
same, like you could, yeah, you could lead somebody astray. And yeah, I respect that you put that much thought into, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
words that you
Yeah.
that you
Well,
use.
yeah, I appreciate that. Well, it's interesting because like if you think what I think of is like just consider like cyberbullying and how
Yep.
some kids have actually ended their life
Yep.
because of that,
Yep.
and like that's on those people who said those things.
Yep.
And likewise, someone may have tuned into somebody's podcast or video that they put up and been brought to tears of conversion and repentance, or changed their life and left an addiction behind or whatever, right? So
Yep.
like that, yeah, that's just like I yeah.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think this is being lost nowadays, especially with kids, where they feel like they can go online, and we could say adults too. Let's just say trolling and people act much differently on the internet than they do in real life, especially once they're behind an avatar and they don't even use their real name.
Hmm.
Like, this is my real handle. This is my real name. Laz. Like,
Hmm.
people can go search me. I don't give a shit. I hope I can swear here. Um, I to me it's I'm just my authentically myself. I'm
Yeah.
searching for the truth just like everybody else.
Hmm.
And I don't claim to know more than others. In fact, the more I start to understand, the more I realize I really don't know anything.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to a deep conversation with you. I've seen you a good few times on the phone booth podcast with the boys, and I like the way you think. I like the way
Appreciate that.
you go
Yeah.
deep on things, and so I think this would be a cool experience.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. That word "inner stand" really stood out to me. I've heard that before. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, explain that to me. Explain why you say understand and not
Sure.
understand.
So I'm being more cognizant of the words that I choose, even good morning, for example, realizing that it could also be like morning, the double meaning. So grand rising. So understand is rather than standing under something that has been imposed on me and made to seem like fact, it's actually going and understanding it for myself, an inner standing where it's more of a,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even that you have to know it to be true, but you know what doesn't feel right,
Mm-hmm.
what's being kind of pushed on you, what's icky. So for example, saying how are you, and people just say I'm fine, and they kind of go through those motions.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like these niceties that we have, but we don't really want to know, or most people don't want to know how another one is actually feeling. Like if you were to tell them the
Mm-hmm.
truth, they would get all weird and maybe not hold a conversation. So I like to
Mm-hmm.
kind of ask different things, or almost like jolt people into awareness just to see how aware they
Mm-hmm.
are with the
So
questions I ask.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, my first experience of that phrase understand versus understand was in the um, it's not sovereign citizen is not the right term because it's a
Hmm.
contradiction properly
Yeah.
understood. But a lot of those guys will counsel you to say if you're before a judge that you understand, never understand, because you never want to say that you stand under their authority since it's ill begotten and we don't consent to an
Yep.
authority that goes against the Constitution, right? So
Yep.
very interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So
And it's just choosing your words carefully, um, being a
yeah,
little bit more cognizant, realizing that words themselves are spells. The thoughts lead to words, lead to actions, and they're actually much more powerful than we realize, especially when we talk poorly about ourselves.
yep. And it's interesting because kind of going back to just even the title of the podcast, The Philosopher King, right? Like words, so that was Plato's motto, right?
Hmm.
Of the ideal king. And so if that's the ideal king, well Plato talked about the ideals, the abstract realities, but that's what we're naming when we're using words is we're naming the abstract realities. Obviously we're speaking those abstract realities of these things like Aristotle showed, right? That he had that progression back to the individual thing, but it's just interesting that, and actually also this is partially why in scripture even names are so powerful. And actually if you talk to an exorcist today, they don't con- once they learn the demon's name they can control it.
Hmm.
Until that moment, the demon will do everything it can to not give up its name. Once it gives up its name, it's completely under the control of the exorcist.
I
It's
did not know
fascinating.
that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And
So
don't the demons go by they them? Little side.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. We are legion, they say.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna dox myself a little bit here, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But my name itself means the Lord will exalt. The original Hebrew means the Lord will exalt. It's not Jonah.
Yeah.
Um, but then my middle name is David, which means his beloved. So my name actually means the Lord will exalt his beloved. So like
Hmm.
names are so powerful.
Yep.
And yeah, that means a lot to me. Like my parents didn't know that when they named me. They
Yep.
just thought, "Oh,
Yep.
this is a cool name," you know. And
Yep.
here we go. It's a little way of God saying I love you, you know. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
It's funny because I hated my name when I was a kid. It's actually a very popular Hungarian name, Laszlo. And they had Laszlo Király, an actual king named Laszlo. But, you know, being an immigrant and growing up in Canada, um, 7 when it came out. So it was just a different name. So having to repeat it to people,
Yeah.
it's like you're embarrassed of it when you're a kid. Now, as an adult, I really, leaned into it and I love it. Um,
So you're Hungarian?
I'm Hungarian, born in Romania. Yeah.
Okay. So when you growing up, did you speak Romanian or Hungarian?
I spoke Hungarian. Romanian was like my second language.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
very similar. It's a romantic language. It's similar to French in that way that I mix the two up. So,
And you could probably I used to property manage, and some of my tenants were Romanians, and I
Yeah.
speak Italian fluently, so I was
Okay.
able to communicate to them,
Yeah.
even though they were
Yeah. It's
speaking
very similar.
Romanian because they're very
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
And if I say "hodjvod," you understand me then.
Yep. Yep. That's good pronunciation.
So
How are you?
I learned a little bit of I learned a little bit of Hungarian because back in a former life, I say, but
Yeah.
back when I was in the monastery, um, I was given older father duties, so I was taking care. We had some aged, elderly priests.
Yep.
They were the founders of the place, and they had fled from under the Iron Curtain in Russia,
Yep.
and they were Hungarian. So, in his old age, he forgot that he spoke English, and
Yeah.
since I was his caretaker or
Yeah.
caregiver, I had to learn some clips and phrases. So I just
Yeah.
know some
Yeah.
very. I don't remember much other than "Kusinum Sapin" and "Hojvod."
That's excellent.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
That's
love
excellent.
Hungarian though. It's really a beautiful language, even though it sounds a little rough when you're first listening to it. It's really cool.
It's
So,
funny because it's a very hard language to learn. They say it's one of the hardest in the world because it's unlike any other language. It is
hmm
phonetic. It's you probably didn't get this experience because it was a priest, but it's one of the best languages to swear in. It's almost poetic the way they can
okay,
swear. So I never quite learned that too because I was very young when I learned it.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
That's good. You had good parents then.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Um,
But you mentioned you were so you were in a monastery for was it for 7 years? Or you said a
six
silent
6 years. Yeah.
6 years.
hmm
Okay. That must have been a very interesting
It
experience.
was intense. It was awesome though. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really made me who I am in a lot of ways. Obviously, everything throughout our life makes us who we are,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, it was definitely defining.
And I like you said you're pretty deep into conspiracies. At least, what I saw on the podcast. Like was
hmm
that part of your awakening before that or did the awakening come after that?
The awakening happened mid monastery.
Okay.
It was actually in my fourth year. I think there might have been a little bit before that, but I don't really. I think I always knew that the 9/11 there was something wrong. There was something off even from
Mhm.
very early on, but
Yeah.
I didn't fully appreciate until. Okay, so this is actually kind of a funny story. For my second year in theology in Rome,
Yeah.
so that's my sixth year with the monastery. I had to do a paper on a different world, on another world religion. And since I was my home base of where I was expecting to be a priest was in California,
Yeah.
I thought, okay, well, California is New Age central. So if I'm going to pick another religion, I should pick New Age. And so in my research for learning about and understanding New Age, that led me to occultism, Kabbalah, Freemasonry, all of
Mhm.
that stuff. And things just started to unfold. That also led me to like when you learn all the new age symbolism and then I was sitting there in Italy and I saw on the telegiornale, the TV, I saw crop circles that had just appeared and they had some of the same patterns and numbers and symbols that I had just been studying in the new
Hmm.
age and I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of got me on the aliens are demons path, um, figuring that out. Then it's all connected. One thing leads to another. The biggest I think mind shifting thing came for me years after I left the monastery, probably like 3 4 years after the monastery in 2017
Mhm.
and end of 2017 I think it was when I discovered the flat Earth idea. I had no concept of it before. Never really seriously considered it. But funnily enough, while I was in the monastery, I had become a geocentricist. I
Mhm.
had I had come to appreciate. So for me, it was more kind of a smooth transition from a heliocentricist to still a sphere, but Mickelson and Morley were right. So we're not moving anywhere. We're just sitting there and everything moves around us to then,
Yeah.
wait a minute. What's really going on here?
Yeah.
So
What opened you up to flat Earth theory? What led to it?
Well, it's interesting actually. A friend of mine, so it's kind of funny. Psychology versus female psychology is like one of my
Yeah.
favorite little pastime things to ponder because we do work so differently, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that men fall back on, which sometimes it's subconscious, is this concept of trusted sources. So if
Yep.
something comes to us from a source that we've already gotten information from and verified multiple times, then we start to verify less intensely because they become a trusted source. And the more true information we've heard from them, the more and more we trust without feeling the need to question.
Yep.
I had been talking to this person for years, and we had had great conversations, and I always came away with more information and knowledge, and always was verified with my own research. And so when they were like, have you considered flat earth, I was like, I was told it several years ago and laughed. Why
Yeah.
would you take that seriously? Explain that to me. And they did. Blew my mind. But I actually started logically considering it and scientifically pondering its the possibility for the first time. And
Hmm.
once you do that, it's over. Once you're not, you
Yeah.
know, yeah. So I
And
don't know
that
where you
seems to
stand
be,
on that.
oh yeah, like that's it was about a year ago that fully, if I could say, awakened me at least to this level. That was the one. And what's funny is what led to it. And let me just make it clear, I don't consider myself a flat earther. I don't prescribe to know, because I really don't know. I
Mm,
know what it's not.
right,
That I do know, and that's all
right.
I have to know. I don't have to prove what the universe is or where we actually are. I don't think anybody really knows, and we can get into that later. But what got me to you know even considering pondering flat earth, because I, again, same, from a trusted source that told me, that has done really well in his life, and then he's telling me about pew pew incidents and all sorts of stuff that he's done hundreds of hours, and then he's talking about flat earth, hollow earth, all this, and I'm thinking, like, I mean, clearly this guy's sound mind. Like, all the stuff he's telling me, he really understands. He understands, um, finance and what's happening, like precious metals, crypto. Like, we were in sync on everything. So I'm like, hmm. So I started looking at it. But what really got me was, there's this meme, Wild One KY. So it's this guy, Kentucky Brian. So he is pretty big in the flat earther community, and he passed away, unfortunately, February 11th.
Mm,
He had a car accident. Rest in peace, Brian. But he had this pinned tweet. He would tweet a bunch of stuff, and it's still up on his page. And it's these dinosaurs mating. And I don't know if you've ever seen this one, but the dinosaurs are mating like really awkward. And then there's the one with all the ridges. They're in missionary position. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And he
yeah.
just, underneath it says, somebody's lying. And I'm like, that short circuited me, because I'm like, why would they lie about dinosaurs? And then I went down that rabbit hole and answered to myself why. And it all comes down to deception and control and fear. And, later on, I realized they're hiding dragons and giants and all sorts of other stuff,
Hmm.
which are in line with, even the Bible specifically. I think Noah was like massive. Um, and, then it got me more comfortable into looking at something as ridiculous as flat earth theory, and
Yeah.
just really just trying to understand why. And then looking at even just like the moon itself, a daylight moon with a sunrise, and you see the angles way off. And you're like, wait, that's not lit up by the sun.
Well, one of my favorite little things that everybody's experienced, but nobody's actually pinpointed and like made notice of until they start studying flat Earth,
Yeah.
is the light of the moon is cool. It's a
Yeah.
cooling light. So
Yes.
if you go from shade
Yeah.
to light of the sun, it warms it. If you go from shade to light of the moon, it cools the thermometer. That
Yeah.
alone tells you that it's not a reflection.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, even the fact that you can get a shadow from it. There's songs, moon shadow and all this. Like, show me anything that reflects, unless it's a mirror that actually gives you that much of a reflection. It just doesn't make sense. So, and I know, even, I showed this to friends, and but it's funny because it'll glaze over, where they're like, oh, they don't. And I'm honestly under the firm belief now that people do not see what the mind cannot comprehend. Like there needs to be a certain amount of leveling up, some sort of playing field that naturally brings them there. Because you could show them in plain sight and they won't see it.
That's an excellent point. So frame of reference is the way that I like to talk about it.
Yeah,
So like if you have a completely different frame of reference, or another, like an analogy that I love, right? If you're building a Lego tower
yeah,
and I give you one of the crown pieces from the top, and you're like a third of the way up, you'll look at it and be like, I don't know where to put this. I'll leave it aside for future, you know? And then
yeah.
years down the road, that seed that someone planted, that idea can all of a sudden click, and you're like, oh, that conversation back in 83 with Jer. Oh, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
whatever, right? And so then only when your mind is, when you have the frame of reference, or the foundational ideas, in order to be able to put that final idea, or that next idea onto. Or like another analogy I like for this is, like, you know, those in the American Ninja or whatever it's called, where they have all the obstacles and stuff.
yep,
Well, they have that one where there's those holes randomly in the wall that goes up, and all they have is pegs, so they have to use the peg to put in a wall. So I feel like when
yep,
we peg the wall, that's when we come to some certainty or knowledge or information. And so once that's pegged, then using that and kind of springing off of that, we can reach other truths that we couldn't possibly have reached before. So it's kind of a cool.
yeah, yeah. It's true. It's a leveling up of sorts, and honestly, it's I don't know how it was for you, but for me, it was a wild ride. It really was because I've gotten glimpses of the, let's just say, behind the veil, and even my personal relationship with God. I always felt a calling. I was raised Catholic, um, but it's one of those things where you get hints, but once you're if you allow others to deny your reality, and usually it's your loved ones or people around you, then it's easy to like just doubt yourself. So one thing that I know I've gotten even from cryptocurrency, funny enough, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin in itself brought me closer to God because once I realized I don't want an intermediary between me and my money, you could call it hard asset, crypto. Um, why am I allowing somebody between me and God and my personal relationship with God? And then, looking at flat earth theory, that's the one thing that it came back to the why. And the biggest why is, well, they're hiding the creator. They want to
Yeah.
hide it and the infinite, and you're nothing, and you come from a monkey on the space rock that's blasted out 13.8 billion light years into what? So they're hiding God in the everything and the nothing. And so that allowed me to sleep very comfortably for maybe about a month,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because now that was a knowing. Wait a sec, I know with certainty, I know that there's a
Yep.
creator that created this. And then it started to come in, but that means there's demons. But that means that there's satanic pedophiles. What if this is little season itself? So this is the kind of stuff that comes with it once you come to the realization that who
Mm-hmm.
is deceiving us, what is the deception, and to what level. And wait a sec, this is an entire spiritual war.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I'll tell you, like, I like what you said about kind of understanding the creator more, or at least for me, I will never forget that first moment that I walked outside and looked up at this starry night sky, knowing that the earth was flat, because I just felt so loved,
yeah,
you know? It was a completely different feeling. And in that moment, when you feel that, you realize that that's a big part of why they hide it. Because the
yeah,
moment we feel love by our God, then by our creator, then all of a sudden everything becomes much more meaningful in life, and
mm-hmm,
we're all of a sudden grounded and have a foundation.
yep,
And very cool.
yeah. I like that you say that. It's like a totem, and then to build on top of that, if your God loves you, you are very special and you're here for a purpose. And you're
Mm-hmm.
actually a cog in a much greater machine. And you're not some
Mm-hmm.
unique snowflake individual. There's actually a really good song about it by I think Fleetwood Foxes. Um, I'll send it to you and maybe you can tag it on here, but it talks about how, you know, when you realize that you're a part of something much greater and you have a purpose, everybody has purpose. And
Hmm.
that's what I like about the Phone Booth podcast too. If you look at the original Bill and Ted movie, right? They're
Yeah.
seen as like two stoners, right? Yet they're so important, like that they save the future of humanity, and they have to pass this history exam because they have to stay together. It's crucial because they come up with a new form of music that
Yeah.
future
Yeah.
generations follow. So it's just like even those guys who are just very authentically themselves to the core, can change the world.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's neat. There's another, yeah, just the understanding and appreciating the significance of other people that we meet, of another human being, another soul. There's this one, I think it was Catherine of Siena. So she's way back in the day, back in the Middle Ages. But she wrote a book called Providence, and it was all about God and his loving care and providence. And one of the things she says in there, that God in his infinite providence and his benevolence, he's so ordained it so that every single person that we meet, we can we can learn something from, and
Yeah,
that's for the sake of our humility. But every single person we meet can also learn something from us, and
yeah,
that's for the sake of the opportunity for charity, where we can show them love by sharing the truth or whatever, right? So
yeah,
there's that cool symbiotic relationship with every interaction that God in his omnipotence has, you know, established for us. Or kind of, it's cool. It's
yeah.
profound. Yeah.
And I like talking about this specifically a lot in terms of reality. And there are times where I cannot deny that I am walking in divine time, when I feel like there are synchronicities where, like you
Hmm.
said, a complete stranger will say something to me, and I know that that is from God. Like that person is
Hmm.
speaking from a place of source, and it's exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. Or I have a conversation beside me in a coffee shop, and it just happens to be in tune with what I was pondering.
Hmm.
Or you walk in somewhere and people are laughing around you and having a great time, and you can't help but feel, hey, I'm vibing higher right now, and it's literally affecting people around me. Because I've had the opposite too, where people are picking fights with me when I'm in a bad mood because I just had an
Yeah.
argument with wifey or
Yeah.
something. And it's like I realize that it goes both ways, and how careful I have to be on my energy when I'm walking around. And to your point, the little acts of kindness, sometimes you just feel like you need to say something to somebody, just because
Hmm.
it's something positive. So
Hmm.
I'm one to actually just, I'll say it. If it's positive, I'll
Hmm.
say it. I'll pay that compliment because I don't know what that will do for that person. I know for me, a good compliment I can live on for, like Mark Twain said, you can live on it for 2 months, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you
It's
don't
like
know
the
the ripple
butterfly
effect.
effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. There you go.
Right.
Yeah. No,
'Cause
it's
that
cool.
person can go home, maybe they're in a slightly better mood. Their kid has an idea that would normally get shot down, but all of a sudden, yeah, go ahead and try that, which means everything to get that from that parent. And then that kid goes on to do something great,
Yeah.
you know? So you never know
What's
the effect.
Yeah, it's interesting too that you say about when sometimes a random stranger says something that
Hmm.
is from God. So years ago, I was in the process of losing everything. It was one of the worst periods of my life,
Yeah, been
and
there.
in the middle of a divorce and trying to fight for my kid for custody of my child, I
Yeah,
never words or spells.
yeah.
I never call a child a kid. I'll come back to that in a second.
Oh, okay,
Intentionally,
yeah,
intentionally,
yeah,
but
yeah. They're
we'll
old
come back to
souls a lot of the time.
that.
Yeah,
But a child. So I was fighting for custody with my child. I'd already been cleaned out financially by the attorneys, so I had to drive cross country from California to the state where address had been falsified in order to open a divorce case in another state that we didn't live. Just a disaster, right? It's a complete
jeez.
disaster. So
Yeah,
I'm like, I've lost everything, friends, family,
yeah,
everything.
Yeah.
But I heard very distinctly in the midst of this while I was staying out renting a room from some sweet little old lady in on the coast of California. I remember like when I just like looked up with tears and I was like, okay, Lord, like I trust you. I hate this, but I trust you. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop trusting you just because it hurts. I believe you bring good out of every evil. So I'm putting my trust in you and I'm thanking you for a plan that's beyond my understanding. Right. And I heard very strongly in my heart, wasn't like a sound, you know, I heard very strongly in my heart, you are Job and I will restore all things.
Wow.
And that brought me
You just
peace.
got tingles.
So I have to get in the car. This is a couple weeks later. I have to get in the car and drive because I can't afford a plane ticket and I can't afford a hotel. So I drive. All I could do is afford the gas to get from California across country. So I threw what I could fit in my car and start out. And I figured out. I did some research, and um, I figured out that at Walmart you can stay
Yep.
overnight
Overnight.
and sleep in the Walmart parking lot. So I'm like,
Yep.
all right, well that's what I'm gonna do. You know, I gotta I gotta get stay close to my baby. You know,
Yep.
so I first it was a Walmart in Vegas. So the first night of driving or the first day of driving ended in Vegas, and I'm sitting in a Walmart and I fall I drift asleep, and I'm under one of the one of the parking lights or whatever,
Yep.
empty parking lot, and I hear I'm like half asleep. I hear a tap on the window, like a knuckle rapping on the
Yeah.
window twice, and I hear my name clear as
Wow.
day. And I
Wow.
wake up. There's nobody in the entire parking lot.
Wow.
And then in my heart, I feel like a longing to go to a church to see if there was a church open. And because the Lord was almost like in my heart, He was like, "Why are you sleeping alone?
Hmm.
Come to me." So I believed at the time, I still believe that Christ is present, Jesus is present in the Eucharist, the Catholic Eucharist, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, huh, why didn't I think of seeing if there was a church with adoration? So sure enough, I'm a mile away, about more or less, from a church that has perpetual adoration. So that means that at midnight, which is what it was, 12:30 a.m., that church would still be open. It would be one of the only churches in the entire city still open.
Hmm.
So I drive there. Sure enough, it's open. Parking lot is full. So I go in and I sit down. There's people praying, and I'm just praying with all these people. 4 o'clock rolls around. I haven't slept. I'm just praying. And then there's this in just really sweet, endearing, older, um, uh, mentally handicapped person. Right? He was just kind of very simple.
Yep.
Um, and he started cleaning all the dusting, all the pews, all the little platforms, and then pulled out a vacuum, and it was loud and everything. And so, but I just remember watching him and the simple love and devotion that he did each and every little task. And it was clear that he didn't care how long it took him. He was just plugging away. And so he finished, and then he left. So I figured, okay, well, it's almost 5 a.m. I should probably get a little bit of shut eye before I get back in the car and drive. So I go to get out to my car. It's still pitch black outside, and he's there standing on the at the little port, like at the little walkway that overlooks the parking lot with a railing. You know, there's a railing in front of him, and there's like a 12 pack of PBR, and he's got like two or three cans empty already or whatever. Like he's smoking a cigarette, right? So
Hmm.
and he's just sitting there looking out at the cars, and I walked down past him, and as I'm like, you know, a few feet past him or whatever at the bottom of the stairs that he was standing by, I turned back and I was like, have a good night. You know, thanks for taking care of the chapel. You know, God bless or whatever. And so then and he's like, thanks, whatever. Good night. Didn't really say anything. And then I'm walking. I'm like about to get in my car, and he's like, hey, you. I'm like, yes. He's like, you are Job. You hear me? You are Job,
What?
and he will restore all things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
waterworks. So it's just one of those things like you can't make it up. Like
You can't.
it's just
You
there's
can't.
just the divine is there in those moments. So
100%. And
that's pretty
it's
cool.
happened to me enough times where I'm just like, I see these many miracles, but I'm like, am I going crazy? Right.
Yeah.
And then you can't tell people about it. Right. But I have one in particular where wifey's next to me, and she turns to me. We're watching something deep. And then she told me something that God, because I was in a very similar situation as you, right? Where it was just like, I didn't know how to move forward. I just knew I had to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she came into my life at the perfect time. Even I wasn't even ready for her. But so this is years later. She turns to me and says, "God sent me to you." Now, I'm paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, God sent me to you as an angel, um, because you really needed it. And then I asked her questions, and she's like, "No, no, let's keep watching the show." Right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't her. Now I asked her about it after. She's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that conversation." So she thinks we had it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like something was speaking through her. And the truth is, at the time when I met her, like I didn't know just how bad it was, because I thought I'm fine. I'm out of the situation. Going to take care of it. Justice, all that. There's no justice for fathers. That's a different podcast altogether. But yeah, there was so much healing that had to happen on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a, it's been a, had I known it was going to happen, this is the funny thing about things happening. Like you would never sign up for it, right? Because it was,
Mm-hmm.
but when you come out on the other side, you're like, wow, the growth that I had, what I learned, what I had to do as a result. Um, and the courage that I had, and this and that, and standing in my truth. And again, like you said, losing friends, losing to who knows what. But in the end, you learn, hey, if you're gonna believe it that easily, then you were never really my friend. You don't If you don't know my character after all these years, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing me a favor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's having these moments. It just I see it daily. I see it in children's smiles. Like they'll literally stare at you and smile at you. I see it in animals. I see it in nature. Like there's it's just you start to appreciate these little things more, and you notice birds flying much closer
Mm-hmm.
to you, flock of
Mm-hmm.
birds together, flying with the car as you're driving. Things that you normally, if you're really busy in your life, you wouldn't even
Mm-hmm.
notice. But once you, I guess, have the presence and the wherewithal, it's almost like it's constantly speaking to you. It is in God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's true. Yeah, everything happens for a reason is something that I get teased because I say it all the time. Almost every day you'll hear me say everything happens for a reason. You know?
yeah,
And when you get to a point, I know I imagine most people have gotten to a point. So I don't know that if it's necessarily anything special, but for each one of us it's special in our own right.
yeah,
But when you get to a point where you can't rely on anybody else,
yeah,
all you have to lean on is the creator and the strength that he put in your own heart and your own mind. When you get to that point and then get through whatever it is that you're fighting through, that you're trying to survive, then you realize that there is nothing this world can throw at you
yeah,
when you have the creator at your back, you know?
yeah,
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of power. And there's some people that maybe haven't felt that yet, and they feel like they're alone. Um, and like it's just me, there was nobody there. And technically you're right. Like you are alone, but there is a so there's the me, myself, and I, right? So there's the
Mm-hmm.
observer, and some would argue that that is God, or the essence of God,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everybody has that essence. So whether it's the soul, whether it's the observer, or whether it's God himself experiencing through you that which he is not in his pure form. So no matter how you really look at it, you're never alone. Like there is
Mm-hmm.
something that took over you. And some people, my naturopath calls it Gus, God, universe, source, depending on what people believe in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely something that we all tap into, and it is way more powerful than AI. Like it blows AI out of the water.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's actually interesting because so a lot of theological concepts and understanding of, like, the spirit, soul, and body, and where does our intellect come from,
Yep.
and this idea to connect like Plato and Aristotle to like St. Thomas and everything is like our intellect is actually a participation in the divine intellect. Like the only way that we can actually know things is through a participation in that divine light.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean it's really beautiful. But yeah, it's interesting. Quick aside or tangent because we're talking about our children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which if you're not aware yet, I can send you a link later. Maybe you could put it underneath. But Erased Fathers is a really cool organization that helps like
Oh,
with resources for fathers and helps fathers fight for their children. But the reason why I say children and never kids is because of the
yeah.
power of words. So being a Christian, I know that I want my children to follow the true shepherd, and
Yep.
kids are only set of baby goats, and
Hmm.
goat is the symbol of the
Yep.
enemy. And
Interesting.
so the goats versus the sheep. So
I did not know that
whether
even there,
that's whether
there's
that's
that play.
intentional word
Doesn't matter.
phrasing that
Yeah.
they always do, like we know that they do,
Yep.
the architects, right? But if not that, then it is at least symbolically interesting. So
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
And I think words are very powerful. If you think about it, we have 26 letters, at least in the English language, and then we have 10 numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Even that zero is made up, right? So it's really just nine. That
Mm-hmm.
zero is made up to essentially to continue it. So it how can you even comprehend something like reality or God with 36 characters, right? And there are certain languages that go much deeper. I know Hungarian is one. I unfortunately can't speak it to that level. I speak at like a you know elementary level. I call it kitchen language, but there are
Mm-hmm.
certain languages that, and I heard Russian is like this. I think Lex Friedman was talking about it. They have such great poetry, and they can really express themselves because they've had such hardships, and the language allows for it. So they have a lot of words for really really deep things, and it's almost like learning English from scratch. English is also one of the hardest languages to learn
Mm-hmm.
because it just doesn't make sense, and it's like it purposely doesn't make sense. Like you could have the words spelled pretty much the same and it's pronounced completely different, and then the synonyms and
Mm-hmm.
antonyms and all this. So it's almost like it's done specifically to confuse people. And this,
Almost like gaslighting in linguistic form.
yeah, yeah. So a lot of the times we say things or we deem things as fact, you know, yeah, because we don't have the proper discernment to really think for ourselves or even think of why. Why is this even important? Because the most common answer is, well, what does this mean? I still got to go to work on Monday. It's like,
Right.
well, it changes everything because if you realize there's a creator, you're much more special than they want you to realize, then you have way more power and backing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find a flow state, for lack of a better term, through anything.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think one of Aristotle's greatest contributions is the art of logic,
Yep.
right? And the first tool in the toolbox is the art of definition. So when we're using characters and words, 26 characters to try to communicate concepts, how important it is to actually go through the process of definition when you're having a conversation to really define your terms and understand exactly what's being said
Yep.
in order to have true communication, right?
Yep.
but our vision is very limited of the things around us, and so our naming of things is very limited in terms of
Yep.
only what it can only be based on what we understand. This is why I've always had like this pet theory that I would love to get to the point where I can, but I would love to like the original Hebrew,
Yep.
like the original Hebrew, not the posts when they added the punctum and the vowel, like that's the vowel points, when it was
Mm-hmm.
just the old symbols of the Old Testament. That was the language that was passed down and preserved. We're talking the language that the Pentateuch was written in before the Tower of Babel, before the dispersal of all the languages and everything like that, right? Those words that they had for it's the smallest word volume of words in of any language. They have the smallest number of vocabulary
Mm-hmm.
in ancient Hebrew. And part of the reason for that is every word has multiple meanings. So for example, the word for boulder is that also means heavy, and
Mm.
it also means liver, which happens to be the heaviest organ in the human body.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
there's all these analogies and parallelisms, so to speak, so that because there is an analogy, you can actually reason by analogy and discover more truths by, okay, well, motion is to rest. Like if I'm moving towards a location and then I arrive and I stop there, that's like reasoning to a conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So there's a destination. So that's where like a lot of modernism is just reasoning for reasoning's sake, and there's no
Yeah.
conclusion. So like if you don't ever come to a conclusion that you rest in, it's like driving around the block perpetually for the rest of your existence,
Confused. Yeah.
right? It doesn't do anything for you. But anyway, so it's just interesting. So I've had this fantasy of um, being able to philosophize and form syllogisms and argue and arguments to discover more truth in Hebrew.
Yep.
So like that would be amazing. It would be amazing to see how much more truths, how many other truths could be unlocked, so to speak,
Yep.
because of
That
the
makes a lot of
perfect
sense because
perfect analogy.
you'd have to bring it to very simple terms. Now, is it Hebrew or is it Aramaic where they have like basically they have one symbol and you can turn it on many different angles just to get the letters, like the shape? I saw something like that.
I don't know about that. Hebrew is the one that kind of it looks like it's calligraphy,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to I think Aramaic is more looks similar to Arabic
Okay.
today.
So it might have been
I
Aramaic,
think.
but it was like
Yeah.
there was this wire that they were able to turn, and it showed every single letter in the
Huh.
alphabet, in their alphabet, just off the one shape. And then the
Interesting.
shape itself has like some, not like a golden ratio, but it has some meaning to it. I remember seeing a video.
Interesting.
Yeah. If I find it,
Huh.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
But
please
uh
do.
but yeah, no, that's very interesting because if you can explain it in the simplest of terms, like that's truth right there.
Yeah. Well, and so part of the reason why it's interesting and that oldest language would be the most powerful is because, and the most interesting from that standpoint, is because Adam had infused knowledge of all things. So he would have had perfect knowledge and understanding because he was made perfectly happy.
Yeah.
It was only after the fall that things went awry. So if he was perfectly happy, he had to have had knowledge of the first cause's cause and all things themselves as caused by that cause, etc. Otherwise, if there was anything left he had to figure out, he wasn't happy. He wouldn't be happy because that's how our minds work, right?
Hmm.
So it's interesting because if he was the one naming all things, then there was a lot of intelligence and understanding of the essences of those things, essences that are now hidden from us. We can't see and understand perfect dogness. We can see and identify that is a dog, that is a dog, that, but how do we, what? I don't know. So we
Yeah.
can't, we don't have a perfect definition of anything that's not created by our minds, you know? It's interesting.
Well, I've thought about this too, and maybe it wasn't. I know there's fall of grace. There's the story Eve and the apple and everything, but what if it was just the act of measurement, and all of a sudden putting limitations? So you start creating the limitations, the constructs. So imagine you wake up somewhere, and then all of a sudden, there's a tree next to you, but then you decide to measure that tree, um, using boulders. And then all of a sudden, okay, well, then this is, 5 boulders high. And then all of a sudden you find another tree. Well, that one's 7 boulders high. And then the act of the measurement is what differentiates, and then it starts to put limitations. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's the limitations that bring the unhappiness. I think about that too in terms of knowledge. Like the more you know, or at least the more you start to measure things and things become relative, the more
Mm-hmm.
intricate it becomes and the more difficult it is. Almost like the things we own. You end up owning, I think the average household has like 30,000 items. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot on your cognition.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when you go on vacation and you just pack a suitcase and you have like, a couple of shirts, shorts, and you're happiest walking around barefoot, completely present.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's kind of important, yeah, that freedom from possession of things that weigh us down. But see,
But even concepts, right?
the way that I see concepts though is because if you look just philosophically, like leaving religion aside, just so that everyone can relate to it, right? Is so I think what Aristotle showed is that there has to be an unmoved mover, there has to be an uncaused cause, there has to be something, and that thing has to be immutable. Because if it changed, then it would have a mover that affected that change, and therefore it couldn't be the first unmoved mover. But in order for anything to exist, there has to be one uncaused thing that is the cause of all things. Okay?
Yeah.
So that thing must be perfectly simple, but it must also have all the information, so to speak, to justify all the variations underneath it. So, and I say that as a preface, so to speak, as a foundation of the my understanding of knowledge and truth and understand in the pursuit of truth is, yeah, sure, there's a lot of different individual facts and information and truths that we can learn down here at this level, but the more profound truths that we gain understanding of, the more simple and unified things become. Just as a really recent dramatic example, because we have this perspective of being wary of psyops and understanding that a lot of it is a show to manipulate us, we're not sitting there too concerned about whether or not it was a casing that fired out of the that we saw out of the camera, or if it was a sniper across, because we just see it's all fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because of that higher truth that simplifies the whole Kirk assassination thing, we can be much more at peace and be like, all right, what's really going on, right? So I think as we learn more truth, like actually, and contain more understanding and wisdom, things just get actually a lot simpler. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, so like I understand that point of view. Yes, because you're less, at least at the very least you could take emotion out of it. Like, okay, something happened. Let's look at the timing. Really odd. Let's look at the events, even odder. And what do they want us to feel? And what, for lack of a better term, what are the normies getting upset about? So what is really happening here? So you can start looking at it almost from a detached point of view. But, and I hate to use the word but, I'm trying not to use but because it negates everything before. And it's such a bad habit.
However, however,
However, however, it also adds such a level of complication because now it's no longer an event and I'm angry about it and I pick a side and I go on with my life, my normie life, and I just feel okay, well, that thing's done. It's just something, I gotta go to work. And there's a simplicity to that when you don't have to think deeper and not have an answer, because we may not have an answer for 20 years. And so that's where it's like I know what you're saying. I guess maybe the best example is, the North Star Polaris is in one spot and all the stars rotate around it and all
hmm
the heavenly bodies. So some say that's God's throne, right? And that's why you have the aurora borealis, and
Mm-hmm.
I think jade, something to do with the color, and all sorts of cool
Mm-hmm.
stuff around that. Um, or the concept of God himself. I guess if you talk about from scientific terms, it was the Big Bang. That's what they asked for was, well, give us that one. Just give us that one miracle and we'll explain everything. But give us
Mm-hmm.
that one. So, and it happened so long ago. Like, how the hell do you even measure that? 13.8 billion light years. How do you measure that? How do
Yeah,
you measure that? It's,
it's absurd.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
so stupid.
and then yeah, it. I mean, it is laughable, and then also like apparently we came from apes,
Yeah,
but apes are still here.
yeah,
So is it only some of the apes that evolved to us? And how does that work? Why are they
yeah,
behind?
yeah.
You
And
know,
now,
it just
and
doesn't make
now they're
any
using
sense.
tools. Like one started using a spear to fish. So like, oh, I guess they're evolving now. They're just like, it's just so stupid. And you
Did
see these headlines.
Did you happen to see my conversation? I want to say it was with Templar a couple weeks ago.
No, I didn't.
Um, we were talking about how I was saying, so I don't want to put words in his mouth because I don't know if he
Yeah,
agreed with me or not. But one of the things, because we were talking about politics and scripture. Well, we were talking about politics, I think, and I was saying that so Big Bang to me is just like um, it's basically taking God out of creation, and it's basically saying, well, matter created itself, creation created itself, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then evolution is the same. It's taking God out of the human formation of our personal creator and
yeah,
making it so that, oh, well, we created ourselves, we evolved.
yeah,
And then transfer that to politics. Instead of the divine right of kings, where God gives us a king and we pray for a good one, or we pray for a conversion of the heart of the king, we pray for protection of his family, whatever, and God protects and guides the heart of the king. Now it's demos. We the people rule. We the people provide our own. So it's the same inversion, the same error that we find in science in the Big Bang and evolution is the same error that we find in politics, where we've replaced God and trust in God, and we've replaced it with the people. We the people. When has mob rule ever been a good
yeah.
thing? You
Never,
know, enter the
never.
lemmings.
Yeah, no, no. It doesn't make sense. Even the Lemmings is a big psyop with Disney had people believe that they commit suicide.
Yeah,
It's not true. Like they actually had this whole like fake
yeah.
documentary with kids were paid $1 to find these lemmings, and then they were throwing them off the cliff. In fact, you don't see it in animals. So just going back, even the idea that humans are animals, right? And somehow we were cavemen and we came from monkeys. I never agreed to that. I don't know how you feel about it. We are not animals. We are completely different from animals. We do have animal instincts, and you can go to the base, we talked about maybe covering sins, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can go to some animal instincts like lust and um, but or you talk about the reptilian brain, but I don't even like to think of it like that. I think the human body specifically is the most sophisticated machinery ever created, and that may ever be created. I don't think it can be replicated.
Mm-mm. I don't think so either.
I mean, it all depends if you believe in cloning and all this other stuff and orphan trains and those. But at least let's just say the soul and inhabiting a human body is the greatest piece of machinery.
So this is part of the reason why I have so much respect for Aristotle is because he didn't have revelation or faith or anything. But with his own powers of reason and science, really very strict science, he concluded that the definition of man is a rational animal, because and rational is such a big difference because, for example, only human beings can sing or laugh. Those are two animal qualities, so to speak,
Hmm.
that we use our bodies for. we're the only creatures in all of creation who can do those two things, because angels and demons don't have bodies, so they can't sing or laugh, and animals can imitate those sounds, but it's not the same. They don't have, so they can't put words to a melody and design the melody and delight the mind, right? So it's really cool. Um,
Interesting.
but and yeah, so but yeah, we're the only one. And Aristotle basically said that we have a participation in that the divine intellect, and that we are, because of that knowledge that we have, which is a participation in the divine forms or the divine form, our soul cannot die. Our soul does not die with our body. And so
Yeah.
he said, but he said, I don't understand this. It doesn't make sense to me, because I don't understand how death occurs then, and there must be something that happens later, but I can't understand it, because it doesn't make logical sense that we would spend the rest of eternity in a state of violence separated from our bodies, because we're made to be with our bodies. So
Hmm.
he knew with enough confidence that, okay, well, the human soul is going to live on past the death of our body, whereas animal souls do not. But there's a problem. What do we do with death that's not supposed to be? So it's kind of cool, you know?
Hmm. Now, my question to you, with everything and all the conspiracies you've gone down, I think it was Plato and Socrates that like books were written about them maybe 600 years after their death, right? I'm not sure what it was for Aristotle. Like, how do we know Aristotle was a real person and it wasn't just, something, a character written by ancient AI as part of his story?
So I have more confidence, because I know there were old manuscripts and everything like that
Hmm.
of Aristotle's work. Aristotle was close to Alexander the Great, who we know is a very real historical figure. And
We
Alexander the Great,
assume he had like 14 books written about him, right?
yeah. Well,
So
so
we
Alexander
assume
the
he's
Great,
real.
true. I mean, of course, yeah, there is some believing in authority here, of course.
Yeah.
What's You bring up an interesting point though, because there is something oddly symbolic about Socrates, Plato, Aristotle in that order historically,
Yeah.
because it actually mirrors the journey of the mind to knowledge, where first we
Mm,
start asking questions, Socrates. Second,
yeah.
we abstract and we come to universal ideas that have value in themselves, Plato. And then
Yeah.
we put those back and realize, oh, those forms are actually in these things. So now I know what dogness is. That's a dog. Oh, that is too. Right. So, like, that whole process of questioning, extracting, understanding, reimposing, it's oddly similar.
Yeah.
Now, is that just because men and a school of thought had to go through the same sophisticated like a sophisticated developmental path analogous to the actual path? Maybe. Or maybe it was an allegory to teach everybody. Maybe Socrates was the only true one, and Plato and Aristotle, or no, the other way around. Aristotle was the only true one, and Plato and Socrates were invented as pedagogical tools of his. Maybe it's all made up. I don't know.
Well, so the reason why I even bring this up, because I never would have thought of it until I had this interview with this guy, Von Conspirator, and he was talking about Jesus, and that some people try to claim, well, how do you know Jesus is real? I've heard stuff even on Joe
Mm-hmm.
Rogan that there really should be a lot more things backing up his existence, like his stuff and things like that. And a lot of things were let's just say hidden about Jesus, right? Whether it's Mary Magdalene and I don't claim to know, I have maybe a 3.8% understanding of the Bible. But the conversation is that there are real firsthand knowledge of Jesus. And I think within like 30 or 50 years, it was written, which is a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
You could pass it on from generation. But Alexander the Great, for example, it was hundreds of years after. And there was,
Mm-hmm.
14 books written, but it's hundreds of years later. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like these historical figures that people believe, oh well, that was true. But then they question the existence of Jesus, right?
Right. Right.
So that's the comparison in terms of the time span, if you really think about. And I've personally been to Israel, not by choice. I actually didn't want to go there at the time. I just happened to go on a Mediterranean cruise,
Mm-hmm.
and it stopped there. And it was a profound experience because I got to see where he was born, where he laid his head. There was cathedrals built within the cathedral for both,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then the Stations of the Cross and all these things, which to me just made it that much more real.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I was in Turkey, where allegedly Mary lived out her life, and I got this water from a stream there that I
Mm.
still like. It's already gone down to this point, but I still have a little bit because allegedly that's where she had to, I guess, hide afterwards, after Jesus' death and
Mm.
resurrection,
Mm.
and that's where she lived out the rest of her life. And there was a lady that had stigmata, um, in the spot where her house was, which then they carbon dated and they said it's impossible, that's not it. But then they went underneath the mud and actually found the original house later on. So that's how they
Mm.
found Mary's house. So
Mm.
so it's experiences like that that help, I think from a personal level, people know certain things to be true. But I'm at the point where I just, and again I use but, however, I'm at the point where I just question everything now,
Mm-hmm.
um, for my own truth.
Well, see, this is the thing that I think is the danger with the gaslighting that we're experiencing with AI right now, because
Yeah.
it's causing us to question everything that we do know for certain, or that we thought we knew for certain. Things
Yeah.
that maybe shouldn't necessarily be questioned in the same way. Like, for example, whether Aristotle was a historical figure or not, the truths conveyed by his writings and a good deep study of his writings, like, there's 100% certainty. There's no question that there's an uncaused cause. No question in all the consequences of that truth that we see in this world around us. There's no question about. So there's a lot that you can actually know and verify. And for me, just like when I was trying to figure out flat Earth, if it was true or not, I didn't want to find video evidence produced by a flat earther, because that could be gimmicked. I didn't want
Yep.
to rely on NASA, because that could be gimmicked. So what did I do? I went to look at tourists who were just posting videos on their blogs or whatever else from the dunes in Michigan.
Yeah.
I wanted to test the theory. Is it visible on the clear day? Is the Chicago skyline visible by someone who's just enjoying the view with zero agenda, right?
Yep.
And sure enough, right? Similarly, around the time of Christ, contemporaneous was the historian Josephus, who was a Roman, who was very meticulous in recording the historical events as they passed. And he's like, I don't know, there was this Galilean guy they that the Jews wanted they wanted us to kill. It was during this time and this year, and it coincided perfectly with what the scripture said. Now, either scripture hadn't been written yet, or it certainly wasn't popular enough for him to have based it off of that, right? And he goes, well, he was pretty popular, but they still killed him. And then the next, 3 days later, the tomb was empty. And as
Yeah.
far as I can tell in my interviews, because I guess he went out and did some due diligence to try to figure out what happened, he's like, I can't figure out where the body went. Maybe he did rise. I don't know. But, and then I think he said, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not combining sources, I think he also said later in his reports, he's like, the odd thing too is that all the people who followed this guy who they claim rose from the dead are all being killed for not denying this. He's like, I can't, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would you die if you knew you were lying about this guy raising and they were like holding a gun to your head?
Yeah.
Yeah, give up the lie, right? He's
Yeah.
like, so there's something funny going on here that I can't understand. So that's I mean, I'm embellishing and humorizing it a little bit, but
No, that's
those are
really
the
interesting.
ideas
Yeah.
that he communicated. Another really compelling, like the truth of the Old Testament. Obviously, there's a lot of um, archaeological finds and archaeological evidence. There's a book series by Warren Carroll that's really beautiful that goes through the history of Christendom, and he's super insightful. But um, he points out that in the time of the writing of the Pentateuch, in Mesopotamia, when treaties were signed between kings, between kingdoms, like peace treaties, um, they would have 5 books and they would have a certain structure. And that's exactly what the 5 books of the Pentateuch mirror. It's a legal binding document between two sovereign sovereigns, essentially, between two kingdoms, so to speak, or between
Hmm.
two persons, you could say. And that's the contract that God made with Moses and the chosen people at the time, not
Hmm.
to be confused with the Khazarian invaders uh, in the Near East right now. Anyways,
Yeah.
so just had to squeeze that in there.
Yeah, no, 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 for sure.
But isn't it interesting that even the format of the document was the same? And now who would have thought that when the nobody would have known that when the when scripture was put together back at like, or like if it was invented or created by somebody, in the 400s in the Catholic Church who put it together. I don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yep, yep. And this is the beauty of having your own discernment, right? When you get information like this, and then it just you can connect the
Mm-hmm.
dots
Mm-hmm.
and come to your own conclusion and your own
Yeah.
knowing.
Yeah.
Um, at least when you're confident enough, or at least have faith, um, because you choose you can. To me, faith is a lot stronger. Belief to me is very dangerous. I think lie is right in the word there, of believe.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times, things are made to seem like fact, and like, a great example is 2020, right? Trust the science,
Mm.
right? So it's like, well, how dare you question the scientists, right? And my thing is always, well, if scientists on those white lab coats, or even professionals in general that wear the white lab coats, actually wear the brands on them, like NASCAR drivers, would we trust them the same?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I
That's a good
don't
point.
believe in trusting the science, just like I don't believe in trusting NASCAR drivers. They're just there to, you know.
Well, yeah, and to your point, just in Aristotle's The Organon, his treatise on logic, again, he says when he goes and the third act of reason is argument, and the weakest form of argument, to your point, is argument from authority. So
Yeah,
that's what most people rely on today, and that's the real danger.
yeah. And this is one more thing that having knowing that there's a creator. So actually coming to that full knowing, even though I've had many glimpses, the one thing that I realized too is that no man should have dominion over another. So I cannot have dominion over any other person, nor should I, but it goes both ways. So when it comes to politics, like you mentioned, politics or kings,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking about, like, the God working in the heart of the king. And I know even the Bible was changed depending on which one, that all of a sudden, like, kings were put in there. Whereas original text, maybe the Ethiopian one didn't actually, there was a specific place where it didn't even have, those leaders. So it's to the point where, it just makes you question the authority even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't agree with that. I can respect
Yep,
where you're coming from, but I
yep,
don't agree with the idea that no man should have dominion over another.
yep,
Um, because we see it even just in the family unit. A man has dominion over his children until they're ready to go off on their own. And even um, like there's something true about the commandment to honor your father and mother. There's a certain
yep,
authority that elders have um, that comes with age and experience. And I think that different men are endowed with or have been given by God or by the Creator, whatever you want to call them, different capacities, right? So those of lower intelligence who are more disposed to and actually happier just with a pickaxe or a shovel, like that's what they. I mean, there's so many blue collar workers that I've known and love who would never, could never, and would never sit in office, right?
yeah,
Or they don't want to make, anyway. So it's interesting. I think different of us have been given different gifts, and there's value in hierarchy, but it's the kind of hierarchy that a family should be properly understood. The patriarchy properly understood is the ruler, so to speak, the leader is ready to lay down his life for his those under his charge. Like
Yep.
ownership, that word means onus, the same root. You have
But
the responsibility or the weight of the the, the well being of those people under you, under your
yep.
authority, so to speak.
And I do agree with that.
Yeah.
And back in the day, leaders, uh, with that weight that they had on their leadership, knew that if they didn't do a good job, they would be tarred and feathered and maybe hung or
Mm-hmm.
executed,
Yeah.
right? Because they
Yeah.
had a duty to the people.
Yeah.
However, that's no longer at all the situation. And this, so this is the
Yeah.
thing. Like, there's the show, The Vikings. It's an excellent show. I don't know if you've seen it, but the main character Ragnar Lothbrok talks about. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was him. Talked about
Great
power,
character. Great
right?
character.
And the thing about power is you have to lower yourself to pick it up,
Mm.
right? So while I agree with you, in terms of family dynamic and taking care of children, and I still, and this even as a father, right? It's like I make decisions for my son because of his age, right? But as he gets older and older, I am more of a guidance to him. I can impart my wisdom and my experience. But in the end, he is still, when he's of age, he has full authority over his own life and
Mm-hmm.
over his own life choices. So I can show him the way, I can show him my way, I can show him, and that at a very early age, that's what I've been doing. I've been saying, hey, this is just what I know based on my experiences, and this is the stuff. But once you get older, you can make up your own mind, and you can respectfully disagree with me, once you're older, and go your own way. But
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I still think Dominion, um, it's a very slippery slope because
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden people, make up rules, semantics, all sorts of stuff, or, they claim like, and I don't know much about it, but the guy that started the religion where God spoke to him, the Mormons, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then he starts a whole new religion because God spoke to him, and it's not to discredit that. I really don't know enough about it, but um, I just question the morality of man and even giving power to
For
man
sure.
over God. Um,
For sure.
that's where I worry because of the seven deadly sins,
Yeah.
right? We are mere mortals, and and even the sins and the virtues, like I even question that, like is that just from religion, and was that meant to control the whole ideal of the dualistic nature? And a little plug to Vince here, the dualistic podcast.
Right?
Was that just to
He'd be proud of you.
yeah, was that just to control humanity and the whole idea of good and evil, and God and Satan, and you know
Well, so the idea of virtues and vices have been made to be a thing of religion, and they're not.
yeah.
I mean, yes, in some sense they are now. Obviously, there's a moral framework that's associated with, but Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, he goes into all of and go down to minute details of all the different um, virtues that reside or that are with associated with different powers of the soul or body. Um, because all of virtue is, in that sense, is knowing what's good for the person or good for us in our lives. Good and evil is what makes life better for us and what makes it harder for us. Yeah, fine. Eating fast food every day might be very pleasurable. Eating junk food might be very pleasurable, but ultimately it's bad for us and it's going to harm us. So if we don't have, like, if we're if we have that gluttony, that then it's going to take us in a bad direction. So the virtue is that which is more difficult but better for us becomes easy through the virtue. Like that was kind of the ancient idea, right?
Hmm.
So I think in that sense, yes, there is a sense of dualistic, and it's kind of funny because Vince and I have butted heads several times, as you've seen, on this whole concept. But then, unfortunately, it was off camera, and we're going to get it on camera at some point. But we we were kind of like going back and forth, and I was like, "Well, wait a minute." So we started digging a little bit, and I was like, "So everything's dualistic. There's good and evil, but you still believe that there's one God above that is the cause of everything below it, right?" And he's like, "Well, obviously." And I'm like, "So if by a simulation all you mean is that true existence, which is God, which is more truly said existence than anything else, and all of our existence like pales in comparison, it's like almost a different thing, right? And it's nothing like it. It's like a cheap knockoff, so to speak. Is that what you mean by virtual reality? That the true reality is in the Godhead and not here?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's a good way of saying it." So I'm like, "So we basically actually agree on everything."
Yeah, yeah,
It's just a semantics,
yeah.
and it's the importance of definition. Damn it! Sorry, Aristotle. Oh, it's so funny.
But even religions, right? So you studied other religions. I think most religions agree on four commandments or four main things, and really it just comes down to two, which is honor your creator and treat others as you would want to be treated
Mm-hmm.
at a very basic level.
Yep.
Um, if you really break it down, and then some will argue the Trinity or even the singularity. That all of this is just an illusion for us. Like we are the
Mm-hmm.
ones that give the meaning of this is good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, I'm eating fast food, it feels good, but then it affects me, in a negative
Mm-hmm.
way later.
Mm-hmm.
But why do I believe that? Right? That has to be put in your head in terms of calories, and this is fast food, and it's not healthy for you. Because if somebody doesn't really understand that, would it affect them the same way? Would they allow their body to process it the same way? So, for example, preying on food can make all the difference in terms of that food nourishing your body versus harming your body.
See, this is where I have real issue with a lot of the modern subjectivism thinking, and like this.
Yeah,
That's kind of that's that line of thought is starts to approximate to that whole what do they call it with the vision board and everything, the secret,
yeah,
right? Where we can create our own reality with our own
manifesting.
thoughts,
Yeah,
manifesting. Yeah.
yeah,
If that was true, that so much of our life experience contradicts that.
yeah,
Why do bad things happen to good people? Why did you and I with had go through a similar custody problem and
yeah,
were erased? Like I don't know your full story, you don't know mine, but we've just shared enough to know that that general theme is
yep.
similar, right? So like I didn't do anything to manifest that in my life. Like, but then at the same time, I've been slugged in the arm when I didn't see it coming, and that hurt. I didn't
Yep.
manifest that. So like we all have senses, we all have the same human experience. So I don't see how that works.
Yeah, so I think as you get to know me better and I get to know you better,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the one saying, "Yeah, you did." Like this is literally what I talk about all the time. I manifested that 100%. It's on me. I take the radical accountability because I went into it so not knowing and not being aware and making assumptions and assuming other people think like me. Um, you can put yourself in harm's way by like ignorance is fine, ignorance is bliss, but it's not an excuse, right? I do not believe in victimhood and licking my wounds and oh woe is me and what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what I did in that situation and why it turned out so poorly for me, including what I had to do to heal
Mm-hmm.
and how my own stubbornness in all of it, um, like God taught me a lot of humility. within
Hmm.
that situation. Because as much as I may think, oh, well, I'm doing this for my child, and it's for my child, and it's for my child, at the same time, how much are you harming your child while thinking that you're doing the right thing for your child versus being really present and realizing this is actually very difficult?
So, are you saying that eating the fast food, even if you're thinking that it's good for you, is still bad for you?
So what I'm saying is believing something is bad for you will make it bad for you. What I'm
But
saying is,
do you see the analogy that I was just making, though? Just sorry to interrupt.
yeah, it's okay.
Because if you're doing something because you think it's going to be good for your child, and you realize that you're harming your child later, you learn that you're harming your child.
Yes, yes.
You wouldn't be harming your child if your belief actually affected the outcome, like you're saying. That was why I brought it back to the hamburger, because my belief that this hamburger is nourishing to me doesn't make it nourishing to me. It's still harming my body in the same way that my actions or your actions or whoever else's actions were harming your child without intent. Your intention was different. So even though with your intention you were quote unquote manifesting a better reality, with your choices, because of your ignorance of certain variables or not understanding your child's perspective,
Yeah,
whatever the case may be, in whatever situation, harm you were affecting something you didn't intend because of blind spots. So for me, it's the exact opposite of the manifesting theory. Does that make sense?
okay. It does make sense, and I really see your argument. Like it makes a lot of sense when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about that sense that you can believe it, but it's not going to happen like that. Um, so the example I'll give you is Olympic athletes love eating McDonald's, and they'll eat it while they're competing at a very high level because it doesn't affect them. They can eat that crap, and their body is a perfectly oiled machine where it literally doesn't. They don't even think twice about it. So the belief part, I think, comes down to the belief in yourself and your ability to metabolize. So somebody, for example, can go and eat at a convenience store, and a guy actually did this and fasted and only ate a certain amount of calories, but it was all junk food. But he was actually losing weight as a result. Now, long term, yeah, it's going to affect him, because his subconscious knows that that's bad for his body. But in terms of manifesting, the way I look at it is things always work out for your highest good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even though it may seem like it's a horrible thing that's happening to you, it is the exact resistance you need to get the support to overcome that and to learn and to grow and expand. So that's the way that I look at manifesting specifically, where you don't get exactly what you think you're going to get. God always gives you something different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's otherwise it'd be boring if it was predictable.
Well, but also I would add to that that like if I believe that my thoughts or beliefs actually alter reality,
Yep.
no, it's going to impact my choices, which then my choices are going to impact my
Yeah.
reality.
Yep.
But if I believe, like the manifesting gurus believe, the secret, that me putting these energies out into the world, it's going to attract wealth to me and all this other stuff, the issue that I have with that, and maybe that's not what you're trying to say, but the issue that I have with that is you're, again, kind of like evolution, you're flipping agency from God, who's, like you said, God makes all things work for the good of those who love him, right? He makes
Yep.
all things work out for our higher good. But like, if I believe that I'm manifesting, it flips that agency to me where I make all things work out for my highest good because I have the power in me, you know?
Yep.
There's something very inverted about that. While at the same time there's something very true about us having responsibility and having to own that responsibility for our actions and the
All right.
consequences thereof. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And this is what I question all the time.
I love this.
Why would they deceive us on so many levels? Why, it's in the food, it's in the air, it's in the water, it's in everything. If we didn't have a lot more power than they want us to know. And you said it yourself in terms of the soul and the connection to the
Mm-hmm.
you said what was the other word that you used? Aristotle. So there's the soul, but how it has to connect to the not the oversoul yet. Another term for it.
The spirit, soul, and body.
Yeah. So there's a communication that you have to
Yeah,
be tapped into
yeah.
that, right? So all I'm saying is, although the secret is bullshit in that they're fucking talking about parking spots or getting that gold necklace or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, physical shiny things, I think that that's a misdirection. Um, However, and I'll go back because I played basketball. So playing basketball at a high level, I learned that the reason why I was able to win championships when I won championships is because I had the ability to hold a championship. So my teammates and I would go on the court and we would already be like, we won this game.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter who we played, it doesn't matter if the team was better. We were like, we won this game. And because of that, most of the times we would win the game when we actually believed that because we put in the work that we were able to hold it. Now, if you don't
Mm-hmm.
think that you can win it or you don't think you can win the championship, you're not going to win the championship.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at, manifesting in itself is that once you realize, first of all, that God has your back and that
Mm-hmm.
if you're really in tune, you're going to get exactly what you deserve. But part of deserving is realizing that God didn't put a limit on you, like of what you
Mm-hmm.
can be and how much good you can do. Your
Mm-hmm.
highest self, your highest anything is out there. It's really up to you what limit you put on yourself. And God will help you with, like the red car theory. Are you familiar with the red car theory?
No.
So if I ask you how many red cars you saw today,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? So it's the same with opportunities, right? Once you decide to do something, you start to have beginner's luck, and then all of a sudden these opportunities really show up for you. And whether it's through strangers, whether it's through divine timing, all of a sudden you start getting closer to your, I guess, your soul's purpose. But it's very hard. It's one of the hardest things because you're not going to get things from trying. When you're trying, you're going to get more trying. If you ask for patience, you're going to get situations where you have to learn patience.
Right. Right.
You have to be patient. And by the act of being patient, it's like you'll get experiences that may have triggered you in the past. And then once you no longer are triggered, it's like that part of you heals. Like you talked about blind
Mm-hmm.
spots. And all of a sudden you're more patient, but you have to be
Mm-hmm.
that which you want.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting stuff. It's interesting because, like, when you say, "Why would they lie so much about everything?"
Yeah. Think about it. If
If
we're
it
just
wasn't,
ants.
if it wasn't to hide our power,
Yeah.
but I would suggest that our power, especially in relation to the cause, God, our power lies in submitting to truth, submitting our minds to the truth and embracing the truth.
Yeah.
So the reason that they are have lied so much is to separate us from the truth and from our higher self so that we don't get there, so we don't help a lot of people, so that we don't share a lot of truth. That's why one thing I think it's interesting is like when our Lord says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That second one is most interesting to me because if God understands all things simply and he knows me from before I was born because he created me, so somehow I've already existed in the mind of God before creation even happened because he doesn't change, he doesn't get any new bright ideas, like it's
Mm-hmm.
just he's unchanging. So therefore, the perfect me, however, I will be with him at the end in paradise after I leave this body and am eventually reunited to it, allegedly, like whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that perfect Jonah is out there, is up there, so to speak, like Plato
Yep.
would say. So
Yep.
like the closer I conform to that idea, just like if I have an idea of you, I think I know you, but I don't, right? The further my mind, the image that I have of Laz in my head is the reality,
Yep.
the less true my idea and understanding is. And the more I know you, the more intimately I know you, the more true my idea is. So similarly, like the I'm more true, the more I am similar to that highest best self that's immortalized, so to speak, in the Godhead. So
Yep.
it's such a fascinating, mind blowing thing. That's pretty
So
cool.
there's it always it humors me when I hear people talk about truth,
Yeah.
because you only have to be in court, family court, to realize truth. So there's that person's truth, there's my truth, and then there's the judge's truth. And which one of them is really true? So one side will say, well, it's baby blue. Other side says it's royal blue, and the judge says, well, it looks like it's periwinkle. But which one is correct? So when we're talking about, truth, even you talk about the Lord, and you talk about Christianity, right? But however, you talk about Islam or the Jewish faith or Hindu, or Buddhism, right? And they all have a concept of God, and it's all different but very similar in terms of a creator. Yeah, of course, some have many creators and all this. However, who's to say whose truth is the true truth? And if anything, I think the biggest psyop is telling people it's not that simple. That it has to be this and this concept of God and these commandments. And I think that's the psyop in itself. It really is that simple. It's that simple. There's a creator, and you just have to honor the creator and treat others as you would treat yourself. And if we just realize that we're talking about the same thing, just different languages, again, Tower of Babel and religion and all this is meant to divide us. If we were just to pick up our heads and realize, hey, we're being deceived, and who is deceiving us, versus fighting amongst each other about semantics and books.
Do you see that TikTok? There was that young man. I'm not sure when it was because the internet's immortal, so it just things just float around. I don't know when I saw it, if that was close to the date of publishing or not. But I saw it a couple of years ago where this young man was basically like he studied all religions in the world, and that was what brought him to the conviction that Christianity was true because every other religion, whether it's Buddhism, refers to Jesus as an incarnation of the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
Islam refers to him as a great prophet.
Yep.
Every other religion that refers to him in nothing but positive terms, except for the ones who killed him,
Yep.
right? So, but then Christianity doesn't point to anybody else but to Christ. So everybody in the world points to Christ in some way, shape, or form, and Christ
Yep.
points to God. So it
Yep.
seems like so he became Christian because of that. And so for what I think is an important thing, if there's such a thing as truth in this world, and I believe there is, I understand there to be, I should say.
Yep.
Um, if such a thing exists, then if Buddha says that nirvana, as there isn't really a divine creator there, it's just we have to empty ourselves and come to inner peace. And if Hindu has 1,000 gods and or more, and Sikhism has its god, but it's never be God. That God never became incarnate. Like, did God become incarnate or not? Did the
Mm-hmm.
creator of all things become incarnate or not? That's a huge question that's important. And that's a historical fact or it isn't. That's either true and it happened or it's not true and it didn't happen. And so I feel like even though there's slivers of truth in all of these other religions, there has to be, because there is one truth, there has to be one true religion, or at least one religion that's closer to the truth than the others in key points,
Yeah,
right?
I could see, and there's books like Power versus Force that talk about Christ consciousness, and literally Jesus having 1,000 consciousness on a logarithmic scale. You have anger at 150, pride is at 175. So anger is actually above grief, which is at about 30 or 40. Because when you're angry, you actually have conviction. And then when you have pride, you have some backing of something that
Mm-hmm.
it's even better. So it makes a lot of sense that you get to love Signs can't go past 499 because they just don't believe in God, so it's stuck there.
Mm.
Certain religions that have they may be in the 400s or even in the 600s. I think Christianity is in the 600s. So you could say it is more enlightened because of the truth. I would argue truth itself, what we deem to be true, and I know there's certain things where people will say, especially when they're hard in scripture and in their belief, they say, well, this is true, and it has to be. What I would say is we as humans maybe cannot even comprehend the true nature of God or our reality.
I
And
get
although
that.
religion will help us in that, I'm just like I'm born to a family name, and it raises me to understand things that I cannot possibly comprehend with the words I was given or the letters. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you even said, in terms of seeing, like we have a limit in terms of what we can see. Well, what
Mm-hmm.
about what we don't see? What about what we
Mm-hmm.
don't even have in our five senses? Some say we
Mm-hmm.
have 30 plus senses, right? So it's like there's so many things that we can't measure and we can't fathom. So that's where I think religion is very helpful in understanding God and having a relationship with God. However, at the same time, what I've learned most importantly is my relationship with God is very personal.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody needs to come between that. I get guidance from complete strangers and things
Mm-hmm.
that happen, but I don't need, for example, a priest that I have to call father for me to go and, confess my sins and I'm absolved and I can go on sinning. No, like stop sinning. You know,
Right.
if
No,
if
100%.
if if I believe in virtues and I believe in living a better life and kindness and helping others, then be that, right? And not use it as an out. So that's where like to me, when I look at it as a, if you look at the way back in the day, Knights of the
Mm-hmm.
Templar and kind of the church and the control mechanism. And I've stood in the Sistine Chapel and, I've seen all the art, way too much art. Like
It's
there's way
incredible.
in the
It's
Vatican.
incredible.
And it's just like, hmm, where did they get all this? Why are they holding on to this? It's like, why is there so much power? Why is this its own city? So it's
Mm.
to me, it's just we've obviously seen a lot of things in religions and how people will literally have wars over their beliefs, and that's why I just think it's very dangerous. So I look at it more like a tool to understand things that are
Mm-hmm.
incomprehensible. That's a word, and
Yeah.
that the truth itself is very elusive.
Well, and that's where I think there's a lot of from my perspective, my
Yep.
understanding of like, because I grew up initially, I was Protestant when I was young, and then I became Catholic when my family became Catholic. It wasn't really a choice of mine, even though I've always been very active intellectually. And
Yep.
so I was 10 years old and I was old enough to understand at least general ideas. But then in my teenage years, I really dug in and learned and sought understanding. But then, after the divorce and I lost everything, it was the Catholics themselves who had turned on me and were so
Hmm.
unchristian like, even.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I left because I was like, you guys are hypocrites, like.
Yeah.
And the reason I came back is not because it took a while, it took years, but the reason I came back to being Catholic is because of the I know with certainty what I studied in Aristotle. I understand certain things about this reality,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking about revealed truth. I'm not talking about this interpreter or that of this version of scripture or that. I'm saying because I can feel this wall, this desk, this therefore I know certain things, and that's it's a he came to such profound truths about the Godhead that you can't deny. Like if you actually follow his train of thought, it's so logically tight that you cannot. It must be true. It has to be true, and I know it's true. And so the primary reason that I ended up back in the Catholic faith is because of the continuity between, and I know I've said this before on the cast, but the continuity between is Aristotelian thought and Catholic theology. I'm talking old school Catholic theology. The modern globalist Vatican independent city state that was created 70 years ago or whatever, almost 100 years ago, actually, it was 1917.
Yeah.
But it's all, that's all corruption. Agreed, you know? But anyhow, so that's that. So I feel like there's truth, and my understanding of Catholic teaching over the last 2,000 years, again, not the last 70 after Vatican II, it's
Yeah.
all about just guide rails that show you, that let you know, like it's almost like bumpers in the gutter on a bowling alley to keep you out of falling into a trap in the mind, to give your mind more freedom to go further and explore more truth. So it's not so much limiting at all, it's more freeing because it shows you the direction to go. And then once you get to the end there, all the pins start flying. It's really exciting, and you don't, there's a lot to learn and a lot of divine excellence and dynamism, but you don't get there if you end up in a gutter 10 feet down the lane. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And
So,
I think that that's important. Like you said, there's let's say the simple folk, right? They need to be guided so they're not in the gutter. I
yeah.
think my question is, and I wrestle with this all the time. Does every human being have the ability to be a realized being, to be an enlightened being, to be
Mm,
Christ-like? And I'm on the side of no, like
mm,
because I even see just trying to have like open conversations, just
mm,
simple awakening things people will just not
yeah.
see. And I almost feel like it's almost like a video game. They can't level up until they've done this, exactly what you
Yeah.
said in terms of building the pieces until the right one comes along.
Yeah.
So
Almost
who
like
knows if it's,
NPCs, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And some would argue the 144,000, is there only 144,000
Mm,
that actually can awaken? And of those, what is their ability? First of all, what does that do? Because I've heard this guy Herbal, so he does Wellness Wednesdays on Spaces, and he talked about how one awakened person is the equivalent of 750,000 sleeping.
mm.
And that makes sense to me. Like I don't know if you've gone through the numbers of the world's population, if you've ever like gone down that rabbit hole,
It
of
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
it does make sense, right? But that number makes sense to me, that one awakened soul can hold a vibration that actually augments the nature of not only their own reality but those around them, and can have a profound impact.
Mm,
And when the different religions talk about Jesus as being a realized being, a lot of the times, or a prophet, I think Islam talked about Jesus actually was born preaching as a baby, like full
mm,
on preaching, which is a
mm,
beautiful thing.
mm-hmm.
I personally, based on what I know, and I'm willing to change my mind, I think certain human beings, especially the ones that are awakened, have much more power than they even want to know.
That I
And
agree.
it's much easier to say, Jesus, take the wheel, or God, it's in your hands, this is too much power for me. And in a lot of ways, that's the smartest thing, is to say, hey, guide me, let me be that cog, show me.
Hmm. I
that
love
that is
that.
the humble thing to do.
And you know what I love though too, um, and maybe we can start to wrap up now because I know we could talk for hours, but I
Yep.
think
Yep.
we're pushing two already.
Yep.
I'd love to have you back at a future date. If you,
Yep.
I'd love to have another conversation because I know we wanted to talk about the seven deadly sins and the corresponding virtues and dig into some of that. We did talk generally about virtues, but it would be fun to dig back into that. So thank you for this conversation. It's
Thank
been
you.
lovely. It's been
Yeah.
wonderful. Um, just to kind of add to your last point there about people not understanding the power that they have within them, our Lord said that the people who come after me, who follow me, will do greater things than I. And in fact, he says to his disciples, when you know, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you'll say to that mountain, dot dot dot, right?
Yeah.
He didn't say, you'll say to me, you'll ask me to move that mountain for you. No, no,
Yeah.
no. You will say to the mountain, move, and it will be moved.
Yeah.
So it's really beautiful because it's to your point exactly, the power that we have within us through our faith, through our understanding and knowledge or whatever, through there's a power there that's untapped that
Yeah.
some way
Absolutely.
can be tapped into.
Absolutely. And this is what keeps me going
Yeah.
deeper and deeper down these rabbit holes, because people will complain, and rightfully so. They're angry, right? You're angry when you first find out, and this and that, and they're poisoning this and that. To me, it's more important, what does this mean? I just see opportunity.
Mm.
Why? It's like Shakespeare, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Why would they have to just get us from all angles down
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
vaccines from birth, this and that, all to lower our vibration?
Yeah.
What is it about our vibration that is so threatening to the nature of the control systems and the nature of reality?
That's so true.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I can announce it here because this is going to go live right now Wednesday night. But so your lovely hosts, Ted and Vince, are trying something new, and I hope we're going to see you there as well, with mornings, just to do a quick little phone booth AM, just a
Okay.
space where people can essentially come and listen to Ted as he's getting his morning started, and all of you guys, if you want to pop in,
Cool.
he's slotting some time out in the morning just to give people access to him, and hopefully people will get to know him on a personal level as well, and
Cool.
all of you guys, and it'll give a little bit of a heads up of what's happening later on. Think of it like having coffee with the phone booth boys.
I love
So
it. I love it.
yeah,
That's
so
exciting.
this is something that he's testing out right now, October 1st, and just see how long it can be done. But that's part
Very
of the
cool.
conversation, and so
So it's
it's a good.
rolling tomorrow morning, huh?
It's rolling out tomorrow morning. So
I
as
love
by
that.
the time this airs, the first would be there, and it's just a little.
Very cool. And what time is that going to be every morning, Eastern time?
So for now, it's 6:45 a.m. And I think it's going to be a hard stop by 7:30. So it's just 45
Okay.
minutes, and Ted pops
Cool.
in when he can and has to pop out by the time he has to start his day, and that kind of gives everybody a window to pop in if they want to in the
Very
morning, and
cool.
just yeah,
I love that. All
and,
right.
and bring cross the streams, like they say in
Exactly.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's great. So that's going to be. Do you know if those is that space? Are those going to be recorded and put up onto
Yep.
phoneboothpodcast.substack.com?
So I don't know if they'll be put up. For now, it'll just be tested on Spaces to make it
Okay.
accessible,
Okay.
but there may be a combination of going live
Very
later
cool.
on. It's just part of it is like, okay, October 1st is here. You guys were talking about October 1st, what might happen till October
Yeah.
10th.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what, might as well start now because you never know what the heck's coming. So
Absolutely.
test some stuff out, and yeah, it's beautiful what you guys do here. With the phone booth podcast, with your podcast, with what Vince is doing, what Snoop is doing. Um, it's important that we have these voices that are questioning the narrative and just give people an alternate viewpoint, and to let them know, like, you're not crazy for thinking these things or
Yeah.
questioning these
Yeah.
things, whether you're
And then
based deep in religion or even just like your spiritual ways. It's really important to come up, draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, and then it's neat too because like our even just our conversation here, there were a number of things we didn't agree on,
Yeah,
but iron sharpens iron. Like we
yeah,
both give each other something to think about, and
yeah,
like that's one of the things I love about the phone booth boys is we're completely different in a lot of ways. We have a lot of similarity in our passion for truth and our
yep,
sincerity and everything, and that's what brings us together. But it's cool to see how there's just so much diversity in the opinions and perspectives that there's a lot of richness there in those conversations. So yeah, well, it's exciting to hear that you're going to be kind of joining the phone booth family. I love that.
yeah. We'll test some stuff out, and
Very cool.
for me, it's all about growth and expansion. And I find personally, when I have deep conversations like this, it not only helps me,
Hmm.
but hopefully it helps others as well who ponder the same things. So just
Yeah,
even if it's just one tidbit or two that they could walk away from this,
exactly.
like learning about Aristotle and how you can relate that to Catholicism, right? I
Yeah,
never even thought that. Now I'm gonna chat GPT all of this stuff, kind of get the
yeah,
Cole's notes,
yeah. I
and
love
then
it.
and then I'm gonna try to prove to you whether he's real or not, just
I look forward to
to
it,
add to
man.
the psyop.
I
So,
love it.
but
Well, again,
yeah,
Laz, I really appreciate you, man. I've appreciated this conversation. I'm really glad that we were able to connect, and I look forward to kind of growing with you over time as
I
we all
appreciate that.
strive for more truth
Yeah.
and all that. So
And on a personal tip, like today, I was kind of having a rough day, questioning
yeah,
things. But I knew I made a commitment to you. And I said, yeah, man, I'll definitely be there. And I feel so much better after this conversation.
I
Just
love it.
even knowing that we connect, on that level of what we went through. I think
Yeah,
this is really important for men. This is something that, is near and dear to my heart is like, you know, especially men that are trying to be there for their child and putting that, first and foremost, and you're going
yeah,
through it.
yeah,
My closing remark is when you're walking through hell, just keep walking, right?
yeah, yeah. Don't stop.
Don't stop. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well,
That's a
it's been
beautiful
absolute.
story they shared.
Yeah. No. Likewise. Yeah. That was a surprise to me too that we have that in common. Everything happen. Look, everything happens for a reason,
Yep.
as they
Yep.
say. So, all
Awesome.
right. Well, I appreciate you, Laz, and I look forward to the next one with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll
And
send you the space for tomorrow morning so you have it on
perfect,
your
perfect. Yeah, and we can
awesome.
throw it up in after the episode on Wednesday night, tomorrow night. Then we can put it up there as
The
well.
next days. Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, just so everyone, for everyone's information, this is the typically, Philosopher King goes live every Wednesday nights. This we'll be streaming this recording live, just because due to scheduling conflict, I really wanted to have this conversation with Laz,
Yep.
and we had a scheduling conflict tomorrow. So here we are, live streaming the recording. But to see this episode and past episodes and every future episode, go to phoneboothpodcast.substack.com, where you can also find Here's the Thing podcast on Tuesday nights, the Dualistic podcast, of course, the Phone Booth Productions live on Saturday night. That's probably the most fun. That's most dynamic and entertaining. Lots of great information packed, and the boys and I work really hard to put that together every week for you guys. So, looking forward to seeing more of you guys. Subscription to the podcast, the phoneboothpodcast.substack.com is free. You could give a little if you want, if you like what we're doing. Just a $5 subscription is the minimum, but no obligation at all. Just come hang out and get access to the information free subscription. All right. That's all I got
Perfect.
for you guys. Good night. Thank you again, Laz.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And if you could do me one more favor,
Yes,
do
sir.
not edit this. Just let it go.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be so
100%.
hard for you. All right.
Even this last part right there where you tell me that,
Awesome.
I'll
There
leave
you
it
go.
in.
All right.
All
Appreciate you,
right.
man. Have a good
Cheers.
night.
Absolutely.